What's that sound? It's For Amusement Only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast.
Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. Since coming back from Allentown, I've been working every night on work rather than fun work. So there hasn't been a whole lot of pinball to talk about in my life, but there have been some interesting happenings going on. And I thought I'd mention some of those and give you all a break from a bit of the multi-talk. First of all, there was an announcement I saw on Pinside about Canada Pincon. They say, wanted to give a heads up to anyone that can make it to Canada Pincon. That's at Canada, Pincon.com. They're doing a small history of pinball booth with a 1932 Bally Goofy, a 1935 Bally Bumper, a 1932 Ballyhoo, a 1939 Keeney Thriller, and a 1954 Surf Club. That's a Bally Bingo. And they're asking if anybody can contribute, please get in touch. I would encourage everybody who can to participate. I think these are very important events at these different pinball conventions to be able to bring out these unique games or these underappreciated games and get the public to try them, get them to understand what makes them so fun. Surf Club, I mean, I don't know if I can think of a better bingo to bring out for the public to play on. Surf Club is amazing because it's got the hold feature, which was first debuted in Palm Springs. And what makes Surf Club just an excellent game, aside from the hold feature, there's an ability to get it twice in one game. They call that the double hold. And what this feature allows you to do is to return only the odd balls back to play, or only the even balls. And that is such a powerful thing. You can replay half of the game, depending on how you've got your balls trapped. I think that's just a wonderful feature, and it's a crime that there haven't been more games that use that, I think. From a player's perspective, it's extremely challenging because while you can get extra shots to, make your numbers, the problem is that you still have to make your numbers. So, aside from that, Surf Club has super cards, and in fact, its rollovers will light the super cards. And it's also got something called a super line. This is kind of a sort of a similar concept to the super line that's on a lot of the 6-card games, where 3 scores is 4, 4 is 5. The difference is that 3 in a row on the super line scores as 5 on Surf Club, and 2 scores as 4. The extremely tricky thing about the super line on Surf Club is that you can only select a certain set of numbers at a time. So there's 6 possible numbers that make up the super line, and if I recall correctly, you can only select 3 at any given time. So an extremely challenging feat to get that just right, but a wonderful game. So I hope the event goes really well, and I hope to hear some reports about the show and how the History of Pinball exhibit goes over. Another interesting technical thread, a Gottlieb Queen of Diamonds. Someone posted a question. Their Backbox illumination went out. Their playfield illumination is still working, and they wanted to know why or how that could happen, how they could fix it. Well, without knowing the circuit exactly for that game, I can say generally that the power comes from the transformer on the 6-volt line, and it winds through plugs up into the head, or sometimes down into the playfield. So there's already some movement through the plugs, and that's a good place to suspect. But another thing is that the fuse. There's typically a separate fuse for the illumination on the playfield and one in the back box. So making sure the fuse holder is good, that the fuse is the correct value and not blown, are important things. The person who had the problem posted the lamp side of the schematic, which is all that's needed. And there's only one switch in there, and of course that's on the tilt relay, which knocks out the backbox lights in favor of the tilt light. But I think the simplest explanation in this case, he says the Jones plugs are clean and the fuse is good. The simplest explanation is that the bulbs themselves are burned out. Now you might ask how that could happen, and the reason is the owner posted and said that the incorrect size fuse was in that particular fuse holder. So when you get an overage, an over voltage condition, what's going to happen is that whatever the weakest link is in that circuit is going to give, be that the wire, be it the lamps, be it the fuse. Now typically it's the fuse, and that's what you want. However, in this case, with the incorrectly sized fuse in there, it's just going to pop the bulbs. So he's been advised to check his lamps, and we'll see if that does the trick. Now, changing the lamps in those Gottlieb wood rails can be a challenge. Typically, it's easiest to remove the glass, or you can pull the entire panel back, but that's a bit of a chore, and you always risk damage to the glass in both those instances. So it's best to be, very careful with that. I have a guest coming over tomorrow night, and in preparation, I've cleaned up my game room. Now, that may sound pretty boring to most of you, but it's been almost a year since I've had the thing fully cleaned, meaning every game is accessible and any of them can be played. I've had stuff on just about every game for quite some time now, and it's been driving me a little nuts. In fact, that's why I'm selling some of my games, is just so that I have room in order to work. The thing about making games is that requires an awful lot of space, and space is at a premium when you love buying old beater games and fixing them up. So it's been a bit of a challenge for me to kind of switch gears from fixing games to building them, and I think I've come to terms with that, and it was excellent to be able to get down last night and test everything. It was not excellent to realize that leaving the game sitting for about a year is not going to be great for how well they work. I do have a couple of units that are either acting sluggishly or just not acting appropriately in a couple games, but I'll get those problems fixed. Unfortunately, not before company arrives tomorrow. It's just interesting being a person that kind of takes pride in having all their stuff working properly. When something doesn't work, it's very glaring to me, but it's totally fine. Just one of my many hang-ups. So, bit of a short episode today. I apologize for this, but I do need to get back to work, and time waits for no one. But before I go, we're closing in on the end of the year of Flipperless. And as part of the year of Flipperless, I've been trying to highlight these games which are very interesting or have unique rule sets or cool mechanics from the pre-Flipper era. And tonight's game is no exception. It's Rockola's TNT. This game was manufactured in August of 1935, and it features 10-ball play. There are multiple trap holes on the play field, as is common for a game of this era, and the point values range from 500 points all the way up to 2,500 points. What makes this game extremely interesting is the advance feature. There's something labeled forward advance. It's a hole kind of in what I like to call the skill shot area, right off the plunge, right in the center of the playfield, down below the lane where the ball is going to arc back and forth off the plunge. If you manage to land it in that hole, there are a series of 4 kick-out holes on the left and right-hand sides, which will advance the balls trapped in those kick-out holes down 1. To talk about exactly what that feature does, it's pretty important to describe how the playfield layout is set. This game has a war theme, and the forward advance is advancing on the enemy. The playfield graphics are pretty violent. There's a group of soldiers which are shooting another group of soldiers right at the center of the game, and underneath the forward advance hole there are clouds labeled TNT, so there's the title of the game. On the left and right side of those soldiers, they're separated by a small chasm, and on either side there are 2 trap holes. The top is 2,500 points and the bottom is 500 points. Below that is a fairly elaborate looking structure which contains those kick-out holes which actually advance the ball. So the first value is 500. You can nudge it around that down to the 1,000 point value. Nudge it around that. You can get down to the 1,500. And below that is the 2,000 point value. Once the ball is kicked out of there, it will arrive down below the center area. Right in the center, there's a hole marked for 2,500. It's the highest point value on the playfield. Below that, if you happen to miss it, the opening is a bit larger than that hole, and it would be possible for the ball to go careening past that. There's a larger hole that is 2,000 points. Arrayed on the bottom left and bottom right hand side, assuming you missed this entire area and the center of the playfield and just go down the edges, you have a chance to ricochet off some pins for 500 points, down a little farther for 1,000. Towards the center again, you get 2,000, and right at the very bottom, you get a consolation 100 points. In the center, this mechanism that has the kickouts is a bit more complex, because what I haven't told you about, those kickout holes feed the left and right hand sides, but right in the center there is a larger area labeled TNT, and the ball will kick either to the left or to the right and then feed those kickout holes at the top. Very cool mechanism there. There are essentially habit trails built in with one-way gates that allow the ball to travel to those left and right hand sides, and you have 2 soldiers, guns out, bayonets pointing forward, running towards, I assume, one side of the conflict, but who knows, maybe they're on opposite sides. Down below this kickout area labeled TNT, there is another hole, and if you manage to miss this TNT area, which is huge, I mean, it would take some pretty skilled nudging to miss it, there's a way to return your ball back to play, and there's a free play hole right there on the playfield. Very cool game. Looks very interesting as far as mechanics. You know, I think the ball movement on this must have been pretty captivating for the time. There had been other kick-out games at this point. Pamco's Contact that we've talked about in the past, and various other games that use that feature, because it's a cool feature. It's great to see the animation as you're playing. It gives you something to look forward to, especially if you really miss a shot badly. But you manage to land in something else of value and really start building. And with 10 balls, you certainly have time to build a pretty excellent game. This features the Rockola tilt indicator, which is a little piece of verbiage down by the shooter rod that says tilted. And it's got a slug viewer on the left-hand side down in the apron. Here's another one I'd love to play one day. Well, that's all for tonight. Thank you very much for listening. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to me on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, Google Play Music, via Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can also follow me on Instagram, also at Bingo Podcast. Or you can listen to me on my website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.
'Cause I'm